Good evening and welcome to blackdoctor.org. I'm your host, Shamika Rhymes. And let me know in the chat where you guys are watching from because I'm so excited about tonight's show. It's going to be a good one. But March is National Nutrition Month, and tonight we are kicking off part one of our special series dedicated to empowering you through food, health, and wellness. So, you all know the saying, you are what you eat. But what if we thought of food as more than just fuel? What if we saw it as medicine? Have you ever thought about that? I'm sure you have, but it's a powerful tool for preventing disease, restoring balance, and nourishing not just our bodies, but it also, feeds our soul, our cultures, our traditions, all the things. So, I see Detroit, Gastonia checking in, Asheville, welcome, welcome. You guys make sure that you share this with your network because you don't know who may need to see this. And if you have any questions at all throughout the evening, drop it in the chat and we'll try to get to those. So let me introduce you. Hey, ATL. Let me introduce you to tonight's panel. We have Dr. James Thompson. He is the medical director of Healthy Living with a Vision Foundation.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Thompson. And we've got Dr. Erica Francois. She's a doctor of nursing practice and advanced practice, registered nurse, and the owner of New Vitality Health and Wellness.
Hello. Thank you for having me on again.
Hi, welcome back. I'm super excited about this show tonight because I know we're going to learn a lot about nutrition and how food can actually help prevent diseases and all the things and put us on that healthy track. So, what does the phrase, and this is for both of you, and I think the way we'll do this is either one jump in, or if you want to piggyback off what the other one says, feel free. So, what does the phrase food as medicine really mean, and why is it so important for Black communities? Who wants to go first?
I don't mind if you
go ahead.
Okay. Yes. Well, food as medicine is a statement that actually reflects that food can actually lead to healing. And with every bite you take, depending on what you select, unfortunately, just as food can be medicine, food can also be a slow poison. So if you're selecting real highly fatted foods or foods with a lot of salt or processed sugar, then it's really not medicine for you. It is still energy, but not medicine. So the term is often used in the more positive sense that by making good food selections, you can actually drive down inflammation, which is the root cause of many diseases we suffer from. The number one in this country, heart attacks, cardiovascular, heart attacks, strokes. Number two, cancer. Even at the height of the pandemic a few years, 3, 4 years ago, the number one and number two were heart and cancer. And then 3 was COVID, and then you had others, diabetes, and strokes, and what have you. So, but all of those are really lifestyle-related diseases. So you can make food become your medicine, your kitchen, your pharmacy, by having select choices of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds and herbs and spices, and thrive instead of just surviving.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that. How about you, Dr. Francois?
That is actually very, very, very true. A lot of times I have those answer the question, when you go to purchase food or about to eat, you ask yourself, is this going to harm me or is it going to help me? You can look at it in anything, in any food, if I'm going to choose this apple or am I going to choose, this apple cobbler, ask yourself the question, is this going to harm me or help me? As he mentioned too, how food plays a huge role in all different diseases. They can harm us and help us heal and cure the body, or can make it worse. So definitely very, very true.
Well, how does the history of food and Black culture influence the way we eat today? Because I don't know about y'all, but you go to Big Mama's house, you gonna have all kind of stuff. So I'll start with you, Dr. Francois. How does the history of food and Black culture influence what we eat today?
It influences what we eat and how we eat. oftentimes I see, or I hear around me, oh, you got to finish your food, you got to finish your plate, don't leave anything. And this is something that's been passed down. And we could relate to that earlier on, probably during slavery. In earlier times, we may not have known when their next meal would be. And this is passed on now from generation to generation for us to finish our food or clean your plate. And we're passing this on to like our children, which is increasing like the obesity rates, because they're now, I have to eat all of my food. And you really don't have to. Our body gives us that signal of to, hey, you're done, that cue, that fullness cue, and we have to make sure we're paying attention to that, along with the types of foods that we're eating. Those are also, passed down from generation to generation as well, the different types of foods that we do eat. And it's really, some of the foods, there's nothing like wrong with them. It's sometimes how we prepare them that may lead us into, different the direction than we're supposed to be going.
So you're not supposed to just season until you think it's salty enough. Now, Dr. Thompson's like, nope. How do you think the history of food and Black culture influences how we eat today, Dr. Thompson?
I agree completely with what Dr. Francois said. And I would only add, I mean, historically, some people make the mistake of thinking that our history started with slavery, and we had a long, rich history before slavery where we consumed yams and we consumed legumes and we consumed berries and many foods from the ground. And guess what? We weren't having high blood pressure and strokes and cancers. And you can still find populations in Africa where they've stuck, rural populations, where they've stuck to it and they haven't been modernized or westernized to fast food and high salt, oil, and sugar. And they aren't suffering from these diseases. And then slavery comes along, and what do we get? We get scraps, and there's not an abundance of healthy food, but we make do with it. We're resilient, and we still said, okay, we're going to still bring these traditions from Africa of having collard greens and yams, but we're going to go ahead and take the salt pork and the pig ears and chicken feet. We're going to make something out of it for our protein, and do all those things, even though you get protein from all plants, I should say. But still, that we did what we needed to do to survive. Now, unfortunately, we've still hung on to that to some extent. Highly salted foods, fatty foods, and it's really impacted our race, our ethnic group, not Black and brown people. So we are a higher degree of obesity, higher degree of diabetes, higher incidence of prostate cancer, you name it. Breast cancer, not so much, but if you happen to be a Black female and have the diagnosis, you have a higher risk of dying from it. So, people think, oh, are we genetically flawed? No, it's the diet and lifestyle. And so we do need to give up some of these traditions. Some call it the slave diet. There's a Dr. Batiste, Dr. Columbus Batiste out of California, a cardiologist, head of cardiology in Kaiser down in San Diego. And he explains it very well in a lot of his lectures that we still have that slave mentality to some extent. We got to get rid of it.
Thank you. So what are some of the biggest health challenges facing Black communities that can be addressed through food? I think you mentioned a few of those, Dr. Thompson, but are there any others you'd like to add to that? I know you've talked about diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. Are there any others?
Oh, kidney disease. There's a higher incidence of Alzheimer's, of dementias, especially vascular dementias. Alzheimer's is the most common dementia. We've gotten a little better with smoking and COPD, but it's still too much going on. Mm-hmm. So the major diseases we're maligned with. So.
Okay. Did you want to add to that, Dr. Francois?
Of course, I'm going to add to like the obesity for sure. We're ranking pretty high, and especially, African American women, like 4 out of 5 are considered, obese. And we need to work to, change those numbers. Like as Dr. Thompson was saying, like changing up this slavery food mentality that we have, continue to adopt. So That definitely is one for sure.
And you
Okay.
mentioned women, the low birth weight, infant mortality, mortality involved with gestation and labor and delivery. We're still heading the list for those in those areas too.
Mhm. What are some traditional African, Caribbean, or Southern foods that are actually great for our health that we can put on our plates? I know Dr. Thompson said plants. Plants are our friends. But are there any other out of those traditional foods that I mentioned that are there any of those good for our health, Dr. Francois?
Oh yes, of course. The greens. Those are great. Yams, sweet potato. Those are all great to have. It's just again our preparation
Mhm.
that kind of gets us, stuck in a rut. With adding on, like Dr. Thompson said, adding in the pork and the fat back and all of that to it. That's where we're talking about these increased saturated fats and
Mhm.
that are not healthy for us for sure.
Well, I guess the question for me, and I don't know if anybody in the chat was wondering this as well, what should we be preparing our foods with? Dr.
Go
Francois, I guess you
ahead.
can answer that one. Yeah.
Um, with tender loving care. That's because we should the foods mentioned, the greens, and there's an assortment of greens. There's such a diverse array of foods you can eat. There's several different types of beans. There's black beans. Traditionally, from Africa, there's black eyed peas.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's just as Dr. Francois said, without the ham hocks, and look, the smoked turkey doesn't cut it either. It's
Mhm.
got tons of saturated fat, and that smokeness adds some nitrosamines and various other chemicals that are cancer causing. So that just doesn't cut it. Really cut the meat out. There's tofu, there's edamame, those are forms of soy. So you can add tofu.
Mhm.
There's something called seitan. That's it's you now. If you're gluten sensitive, stay away from it because there's pure gluten. But when you go to a vegan restaurant and they have that Thanksgiving dinner that looks just like and tastes like turkey and all that, that's seitan, and it's pure gluten. It's a vegetable. It's still
Mhm.
not an animal product, and it's spiced to taste and have the texture of meat. And so it is about substitutions. And there's ways of eating abundantly
Mhm.
with substitutions. So balance it out with your beans and your grains. That's your source of protein because one of the most common questions is where am I going to get my protein?
Yeah.
From all the food you eat. Proteins are made of amino acids. They're in greens, they're in fruit, but they're even to a greater degree in grains and like whole grains, that is, not white flour,
Mhm.
not white rice,
Mhm.
but whole grains and beans. Pick your beans. So when you add that together and you put in those herbs and spices and nuts and seeds, if you're not allergic to them, you've got a full meal. And guess what? You can get full. You can eat as much as you want because the fiber is gonna satisfy you, so you're not gonna get over calorized. I mean,
Mhm.
there's some food has more dense calories than others, but you're talking about the densest calories in fatty foods and processed foods. So your stomach can fill up if you're eating those fruits and greens and stuff. You push away and you don't have to get that nap like after Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, what about if you and I think I saw somebody in the comments mention this about if beans cause a lot of gas or uncomfortableness, bloating, and all those things, what should you be doing then? Because if you're like, well, my body doesn't seem to really like all those beans, or should you just limit the amount of beans you're eating?
That's part of it. There's a
Okay.
Dr. Will Bolsowitz.
Mhm.
He's a GI doctor, plant-based, all over the internet, and he has a slogan or a phrase I like to say: go slow and go low." So if you're transitioning, usually you're in this state of what's called dysbiosis already. Your gut is messed up, and
Mhm.
so you start throwing twice as much fiber down there as you used to because eating a lot of beans and whole grains,
Yeah.
you're gonna have some problems. So go with something more easily digestible, like the lentils, and not a whole big bowl of lentils. If you're not used to eating a lot of beans, start off a few tablespoons every week or two. You go up a little more. You are rehabbing your gut microbiome, which has been in disruption. But most people, unless you're allergic to them, because this not going to work if you're allergic. So if you're getting hives and swelling, talk to your doctor. But otherwise, if it's just a little flatulence, that means feeling a little bloating, a little more gassy. That means two things. One, your bowels messed up and you need to be doing that. Not feeling uncomfortable, but going in that direction. And two, you need to go low and go slow, and you'll get it back to where it can tolerate much more than that.
Thank you. I see a couple of comments in the or a couple questions in the comments that kind of go with this part of the conversation. Shelly Morris wants to know about, hold on, it moved on me. What about butters and seasonings, and should we be consuming animal meat? So the first part of that is, what about butters and seasonings? What we season with? Either one of you can answer that one.
You want to go with that?
Oh, sure. That's fine. Like different seasonings, you can use your herbs and garlic, those parsley, and they are actually great. They really enhance your food rather than just the seasoned salt and our regular salt. There are other herbs. I think Dr. Thompson mentioned, like right before we went backstage, I believe, about the salad dressing that he makes and everything that he put in there. You definitely got to share it, Dr. Thompson. Share the recipe for sure, because there's so much more, and it's just we have to explore and be okay and have an open palate too. So sometimes we get so stuck on what we used to eat, and as you continue to make those changes slowly, make and transition, your palate will change, your taste buds will change, and you'll become accustomed to that. And disclaimer, I'm not there yet, like Dr. Thompson, with being a total vegan, so but when I do, or my family, we do consume, meat products, we try to make sure it's not fried, in a lot of oil. And we try to, of course, bake it, broil, using those methods in preparing meats. We typically do try to avoid the red meat due to the increased, inflammation with that. But for the most part, it'll be like chicken, turkey, and our, fish that we do consume, but we make sure we don't try to, prepare it with high fats.
Okay. Well, what should they do about it? Yeah, Dr. Thompson.
No, I was just going to say I agree. The thing is that people shouldn't see this as an all or none thing, because whatever steps you take are going to lead towards better health.
Yes.
They have studies that, well, let me put it this way. Standard American diet comprises really about 10% of fruit and veggies. 10%. It's like almost 66 or 2/3 of it is processed food. That's what really does us in. And then another almost third of it is meat and dairy related foods. And so and then you have some small wedge of grains. But the key is we're average about 2 servings of fruits and vegetables, the standard American diet. So studies have shown if you just get to 4 or 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a day, and you don't do anything else, you can increase your longevity by about 4 to 5 years.
Wow.
So why settle for that, right? So as you increase and focus more on what you're adding than what you're subtracting, because if you successfully add these fiber containing foods, and only plants contain fiber, you're not going to have a lot of room for that bad stuff. There's a chef that works with me on some projects, Chef Dom out of LA, and I like the way he put it. He said he tells his clients, go half on the meat and plug in those calories with making mainstream your fruit, your veggies, things like that. Maybe instead of 1 serving of broccoli, you're going to have 2. Or if you're at a restaurant, you're going to look at those sides. I mean, if asparagus, broccoli, you have a salad, you can make something out of almost nothing by just planning ahead. So really, it's just a matter of substituting and making an investment in your health by trying to get the meat off your plate, the dairy too, and
Mhm.
putting in instead as much as you want those wholesome whole foods of fruits and vegetables and legumes and whole grains.
Let's see. We have another question. Shelly again. She says, "Can we trust organic foods, or should we be cautious of that as well?" Because we see organic on a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I think since we have so little control over things, one thing about this country is if it's stamped organic, it's generally certified to be organic. Now, if you say, well, does that mean there are no chemicals on it? No, not necessarily, because sometimes in these fields, organic fields right down the road, or where they're spraying all kinds of stuff, and it can travel through the air. But I think on a relative basis, if you're eating something organic, you're getting a whole lot less chemicals. That glyphosate, Roundup, they call it, that they
Mhm.
use to dry out wheat and they use for fertilizer. They use to keep bugs off of corn and all that. The problem with these products is that these chemicals get into the soil and then get into the food. And some foods worse than others. You can lose your whole bank account trying to get all organic. So I'm not
Mhm.
recommending that. If you want to find out more online, there's a working group. It's called Working Group something. They have Clean 15. If you put that in, Clean 15 and organic, and then they have the Dirty Dozen. So the Clean 15 are 15 fruits that you really don't have to worry too much about it. Pineapple, these are with thick coats. Pineapple, avocado. You don't usually eat the skin of those. But the
Right.
ones you never want to, I won't say never, but you really should try not to eat if it's conventionally farmed, are strawberries. There are about 18 different pesticides
Mhm.
that sink into that. You can't scrub that stuff out. And
Mhm.
so I always get just organic strawberries. Some other ones
Mhm.
on that list you want to go organic usually are grapes and some of the in-ground root vegetables. But the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen online, you can kind of figure that out and prioritize, so you're not, going through a whole paycheck when you go up to the cashier.
Right. And I
And
think that is
also,
another. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think if Shelly, she could look into, shopping locally at her local farm stores, and local, just, also farms. They also sell like their meat products, like straight off of their farm. So you don't have to be too concerned. I know some do, like you mentioned, but you don't have to be too concerned about like them having to preserve it, with certain chemicals when you're buying it fresh, like from the farm. So she can, definitely look that up. We do that as
Mhm.
well.
Okay. So I see a lot of this on social media too, and about how to clean these vegetables and fruits when you do buy them to get all the pesticides off. So do you either of you have any advice for the proper way to clean these fruits and vegetables?
There are different ways, and I don't know that. Well, if you want studies about it, Dr. Michael Greger, nutritionfacts.org, has some videos on YouTube about looking at comparing different ways of cleaning fruits and vegetables. And he looked at vinegar, he looked at baking soda, he looked at just water and all that. To make a longer story short, I think it culminated in him recommending just salt water for a lot of them. And I don't know the recipe for it. It's something you can look up, but just some salt water can be enough. But the other options do have some value too, like whether you use some diluted vinegar. Vinegar is acetic acid, or using some baking soda with water. The bottom line is washing. At the very least, washing. May get a fruit brush or something and wash it off. You don't have to be as diligent with the organic fruit, but doesn't mean organic you can just pop it right in your mouth. You still want still want to wash that off.
Yeah.
I felt that my blackberries took on a little salty taste when I used salt water to wash them. I soak them in salt water and then rinse them, and you just couldn't rinse out all the salt. So I had a little salty taste, which bothered me. But you kind of figure it out. And again, with those foods that are the Clean 15, you don't have to be as diligent with those. So
Okay. Okay. Um, let's see. I think you answered this question, but how do healthy fats like those from avocados, nuts, and fish reduce the risk of chronic disease? And then I see a question in the comment with a follow up to that, actually. So, Dr. Francois, I'll start with you.
The healthy fats, they can help with reducing like the quote unquote bad cholesterol, or the LDL cholesterol can help reduce those and reduce the risk of heart disease. Omega-3 fatty acids are good for, good brain health, and good cognition, and those are good for us as well. So utilizing the monosaturated and polyunsaturated fats can lower the risk of heart disease. And we want to just kind of stay away from like our saturated fats that can increase our LDL, our quote unquote bad cholesterol.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are three fats we're trying to really keep out of our system. The saturated fats, which comes mostly from dairy products. Some people think, oh, it must all come from meat. Mostly from dairy products, because dairy products are so rampant in the standard American diet. When you involve cheese, because everything's cheese. And then there's the cholesterol, of course. So why can our body makes cholesterol? So why do we need to consume it? Where do we get a major plug from that? You get that from meat, and you get that from eggs. One medium to large size egg is a whole day's worth of cholesterol. Now, who eats one egg? And then thirdly, trans fats. Trans fats. That's that margarine. People that go, oh, I'll go from butter to margarine. You going from one frying pan into a deeper frying pan. So you're better with the butter, but you're actually best without the butter too, since that's dairy and more saturated fat. They do have vegan butter. I'd caution about people with the coconut oil and palm oil, because that has a lot of saturated fat in it. But if it's made from cashews or something else, then that's plant based, that isn't palm oil or coconut oil, then you're on safer ground. But yeah, so if you try not to fry foods, because that, even when I used olive oil to fry, well, you oxidize that oil. Olive oil has a low smoke point, so you have adulterated that olive oil when you deep fry or fry. So you really want to use limited amounts of oil. Remember, there's two things about oils. One is, no matter how healthy the oil, and I think olive oil is the healthiest, extra virgin, it still has 120 calories per tablespoon. So you get a lot of calories. To give you an idea, sugar and protein is 4 grams, is 4 calories per gram, but oil is like 9. So it's more than twice as much as sugar and protein. But yet everybody bashes sugar, and especially processed sugar you should avoid. But oil is where a lot of the fat comes. A lot of people don't realize too that when you eat excessive oily food, you go to get a Burger King or a McDonald's meal and get those fries and a soda, your body burns the sugar and it stores the fat. And so fat is our nemesis, and a lot of it comes from meat and dairy. And so the other thing, besides getting a ton of calories when you choose oily foods or put oil on your salads and all that, is it's also is bad for blood vessels. Studies in nutrition have shown that it stiffens your blood vessels. They don't act right. Even after one meal, they looked at blood vessel elasticity. There's something called, movie on Netflix, I think, called The Game Changers. And they showed in these athletes what happened when they just have a meal that's high in fat, your average standard American diet, versus one that's more vegetable, and it showed that their blood vessels got stiff. So it's you're doing that every day, 3 times a day sometimes. That's not good for your blood vessels. It means it's not good for your heart, not good for your brain, not good for your kidneys. So
wow. Yeah, I see the comment that I was talking about. They were asking about what you answered, olive oil or avocado oil, and I see someone asking about grapeseed oil. Is that a good one?
Well, they all have that 120 calories per tablespoon. So you're getting big calories no matter what oil is. Even if Dr. Barnard said, even motor oil, it all is the same. Don't try motor oil though. But they all give you the same calories. Now, some oils are better than others, and the reason why olive oil tends to be at the top of the list is because it does have, as Dr. Francois mentioned, those monounsaturated fats. And the Mediterranean diet has shown that there's a little lower risk of some stroke in people that have that. But really, the bigger advantage of the Mediterranean diet is you're eating less processed food and eating a whole lot of veggies. And so that's really the key. Rapeseed oil, it's kind of, I bundle them in with a lot of the other plant-based oils. Yes, they're better than lard and, Crisco, stuff like that, but it's not, you can do better.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. Black Americans have higher rates of hypertension, which we mentioned that earlier, and heart disease. Um, how can really focusing on what we're putting in our mouth help us take control of those things and prevent that? I know we've talked about, removing like the fats and especially the dairy, the meat, and all those things, but how else can diet help us take control of and prevent hypertension, heart disease? And let's even go further, diabetes. Um, let's see, Dr. Francois, you want to start? We'll start with you.
Yes, for sure. By decreasing, of course, our sodium intake can definitely help with lowering our high blood pressure.
Mhm.
And with making better food choices overall, it helps to decrease our blood pressure. Oftentimes, we see, like in clinic, as patients are losing weight, their blood pressure decreases as well. So we're taking them off of their blood pressure medications because now that they've lost just as little as 10 pounds, their blood pressure can decrease by 10 points, like the systolic blood pressure can. And so it's amazing to see how our food intake, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I was born with this, or it's through genetics that I now have high blood pressure. Yes, that may be a factor, but we have choices that we can make to determine, will we still carry this, chronic condition. Um, so through changing our diet, exercise, we can change these numbers, getting our high blood pressure down, and diabetes as well, by decreasing. Sometimes we talk about diabetics with the sugar intake, but it's also like the high carb foods that we do intake that contributes to the high glucose levels and high A1C levels that we have. So by changing, changing up, eating more fruits, of course, vegetables, and decreasing those saturated fats and the different type of fats will help with bringing down our blood glucose levels and our high blood pressure.
Okay. Dr. Thompson, did you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
I agree with everything she said.
Okay.
The sodium is crucial in bringing
Mhm.
down, because the food we eat, especially processed food, are loaded with sodium. A
Yeah.
lot of people think, oh, I'll just not use the salt shaker at the table. People kind of grasp onto that and think, okay, I can eat everything else now. But if you read labels, most canned and bagged and bottled food is just loaded with sodium, and it adds up. I mean, we're talking about 7,000 or more. And if you eat at a fast food restaurant 2 meals, you're in the double digits. So yeah,
Mhm.
sodium is huge. And then the others, as we've talked about, the salt and the oil, the salt and the sugar, the processed sugar. We don't lump in sugar that comes from starches from like white potatoes or um, even rice for the most part. Although white rice, it will be absorbed and cause an insulin spike. And see, that's the thing, is there's this insulin resistance that can lead to not only diabetes, but it lead to a lot of other disease, heart disease, strokes. I think
Mhm.
there's a pathway to dementia, including Alzheimer's, by having insulin resistance. And it's estimated that almost half the adults in this country have that, because it can be very silent until it starts to mess with you and you get the diagnosis of diabetes type 2. So
Mhm.
really, in terms of answer your question, it's huge. The diet is huge. It's not everything, as
Mhm.
Dr. Francois said. Exercise counts, stress management counts. I've actually, shameless plug, I've got a book coming out next week that's a holistic guide, um, that's called Fearless Wellness, where the Fearless is an acronym for food, plant-based, exercise, avoiding toxins, not just of tobacco and alcohol, but also those food toxins that we've talked about, those preservatives, those dyes,
Mhm.
emulsifiers, things like that. Restorative sleep, lessening stress, engaging your mind, especially if you're in your 60s like me. You got to keep that mind sharp and exercising
Mhm.
by doing complex things. And then the last two S's are for social energy, which, believe it or not, can give you some extra years of life, collaborating with others for a common good, and spiritual connectivity. And so,
Yeah.
shameless plug. Yeah, I've got that book coming out, and but I think food is first in that acronym because it's so important. it's what's really killing us. We started off saying how food is medicine, but it could be food as toxin or poison. We
Mhm.
got to turn that around. And as good as time as any, COVID uncovered that we are really very vulnerable. I mean, what
Mhm.
COVID uncovered was not new. It was been there for years. And, you know, you can
Mhm.
talk about the social determinants of health and why this is, but we've got to turn it around and realize that we can't let the opportunity cost hit us. Because when we go and choose those things that we really like, and those calories that are empty, like in rice or chips, or that have bad actors with them, that's the opportunity we're missing to eat something healthier that can actually give us a longer, qualitatively better life. And
Mhm.
we're talking about driving down inflammation and talking about driving down oxidative stress and a number of things that cause disease.
So let's talk going to the grocery store. When we go to that grocery store, I know we said don't spend your whole paycheck on organic. But what should we be looking for, especially in those low access areas where fresh food options are limited? What are some suggestions that you have? I've heard sometimes that it's when you go into these grocery stores, stick to the outside, don't, the perimeter, don't go down those middle aisles because that's where you get in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. If you can, you've arrived when you're hanging out in that natural rainbow of produce section for 30 minutes or so.
Mhm.
Because I grew up where I want to rush through that section, to where the cereals are and all the colorful stuff, and then you get to the cashier, you got all this rainbow of chiclets and all the, what do you call it, gummy bears, all the various things
Yeah.
that are horrible for us. They even they're slowly taking out all these dyes. They're outlawing these dyes that Europe outlawed, years ago. FD and the yellow dye or red dye number 3. So really, yeah, shop on that periphery and with the dried goods, and you are doing well when you load your basket up with those things and try to stay away from those other areas where the meat and dairy and all that processed food is. And people say, well, that's going to cost so much. Look how much you're paying for eggs. Look how much you're paying now for a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
For some meat. Get a good steak now. Some salmon. I mean, do you know how much you're gonna save when instead you get some dried goods like beans and rice, or you get some in-season fruit? You're gonna save. And there are places on
Mhm.
the internet where you can learn a lot more about that. Eat for $5 a day, a family, by how
Yeah.
you shop. Some of the things
Mhm.
Dr. Francois mentioned, shopping on a local farmer's market, or you have those. There's some community CSAs where communities get together and they have to invite the farmers and they pool together their resources. And there's some urban farms. I know in the Chicago area, in the Inglewood, they have an urban farming. They pump out 60,000 pounds of organic produce. It's
Mhm.
growing home incorporated in the Chicago area. I was on the board of directors for a few years for that organization. But I'm sure many big cities have those.
And most people, we think that, it's expensive, but when you really take a look at, like, how much are we really spending for DoorDash and Uber Eats? If you add that up, you have like a whole shopping cart full of
Mhm.
good choices, the produce, the beans. You can get a I just looked yesterday, like I was at we have Publix down here in Florida. You can get like a frozen green beans. It was a bag was $2. A whole
Mhm.
bag of frozen green beans. If you are not able to get, the fresh ones, sometimes I don't really have the time sometimes, but if you had to choose, you could get the frozen, and it was $2. I was like, this is not bad at all. You'll end up, if you really did the math, you would end up cheaper than you think you would, and also quality of life is what matters the most, and that's
Mhm.
price.
You're so
Okay.
right. I'm so glad you brought up frozen vegetables, and don't pass up the frozen fruit either. Many
Mhm.
people think, well, it's not as fresh, and maybe it's been in there a while. What they don't realize is when they clip those veggies and fruit, they go right into the freezer. They may
Mhm.
sometimes flash boil the veggies because that preserves them more. They don't crystallize and break down proteins, but they go right in, and so that freshness is locked in. So it's the next best thing to fresh produce. Sometimes the frozen's better than some of the stuff sitting out there that had to travel 5 states, and you're a week into, it's been a week on the shelf. They've kept it in the refrigerator, but it's lost a lot of its life. Whereas the frozen, it's frozen off the vine. So definitely, and tends to be less expensive. I do when blueberries are out of season, I'm getting those wild frozen blueberries and going to town.
Same. Same. I do see a question, and it actually kind of goes with my question, my next question. So, what are some easy, healthy food swaps that we can make in our daily meals? And then the question in the comments is, what are the best veggies for diabetics? So whoever wants to take that question.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, sure. Well, really, for diabetics, you have to be a little more careful. Now, it's easier now because a lot of diabetics have those monitors, those CGM monitors, so you can figure out what foods are causing you to have a sugar spike, which would be followed by an insulin spike. Yeah. So you want to work with the doctor about those, but then you can also get familiarized with high glycemic and low glycemic foods, so like if you've had some problems with your blood sugars or you're early on in the process, you may want to avoid the high glycemic fruits like bananas, especially the riper bananas and grapes and things like that. And they have when the berries tend to be lower glycemic, and they have a little more fiber and they can slow down that sugar absorption. But really, when you substitute any fruit or vegetable or whole food for something that was processed or meat or dairy, you are ahead. So as much as that you can do, whether it's brown rice, whether it's what are those other amaranth, whether it's quinoa, there's something called farro, fonio. There's tons of grains out there. Explore with those. They have loads of fiber, they have minerals, they have manganese, a lot of the things that you need, iron. There's oatmeal for the mornings. If you've been eating those breakfast cereals, start off with some oatmeals and some fruit in the morning. For my sandwich, I'll get the most healthy bread I get Ezekiel bread, the ones sesame Ezekiel bread. Doesn't have a lot of sodium in it, has a lot of fiber in it. It's made from sprouted seeds, and you have to get used to it. Someone go to tomorrow and get that, like, oh, this tastes like cardboard. So, but really, you have to rehabilitate your taste buds, and they'll get used to it. You keep feeding the same thing, you'll get used to it, and it'll bring those taste buds to life when you eat more wholesome food. So my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the equivalent for that is I get a healthy bread, a whole wheat. You may not want to start off with what I said. Maybe you just start off with a full whole wheat bread that doesn't have a high amount of sodium. Leave those labels. And then a nut butter that doesn't have any added oil to it. You don't want palm oil. That makes it smooth and all that. No palm oil or those kind of, or added oil. It should just be the oil from the nut, a nut butter, preferably not a lot of salt. So read those labels. So you have your healthy nut butter, which you can find at Trader Joe's easily or Whole Foods. And then I put blueberries in there. I mesh the blueberries in. That's my fruit in there. Or I mesh the strawberries in there. Sometimes I've used unsweetened oatmeal. Layer that, and then I have my nut butter. And so you can get creative with this thing. And we're used as an ethnic group, we're used to being creative. We had to do that back in slavery. We had to get real creative with food because we weren't getting much thrown at us. The good stuff wasn't coming, so we had to get creative. So we have to take that creative ideology, but make it healthy so we can live longer and live healthier. Something called, there's a lifespan and there's a health span. Lifespan, we can keep you living on all kinds of medicines for a long time, but you may be miserable and disabled and all that. But health span, where the number of years you get not being dependent on a whole list of medicines, seeing doctors every week, that's what you want to work on. You don't want to wait till you get sick. So.
Okay. I see a question from, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like Shamika, you mentioned too, in replace of the rice, the cauliflower rice, which is actually very, very good. I've tricked my kids a couple of times with it. So that's a good swap. And also just for our audience too, when Dr. Thompson mentioned like the oatmeal, let's avoid the ones in the little pack, for sure. That's the maple brown sugar and all of that. But making our own oatmeal.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I saw a question. Pierre Francois, I don't know if there's any relation there, wants to know what about Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods? Are those good to eat? Dr. Francois, you want to take that one?
I'll let Dr. Thompson take that one. I think I know.
Okay, sure. I think those are good transition foods. I kind of position those as kind of like the nicotine gum or something that the vaping a little bit before you quit the cigarettes. But you don't want to get stuck there because they have a lot of salt and they have a lot of fat. One of them's made. Let me see, Beyond Possible. I think it's the Beyond Burger is made from pea protein, and the other's made from soy. But the thing about them is they still have fat. They're still kind of fatty. Maybe a little less fat than a fat burger you get at your local fast food joint, but basically you're still getting a lot of fat and salt with those. And the plants are highly processed in it too. So I don't know what the long run of that is yet either, because when we talk about soy products, the less processed are the healthier ones like tofu, edamame, miso. Those are healthier. They have more fiber. They're less processed. But yeah, so those. I mean, if you're going from your standard fat burger to that, or you do it just when you eat out because that's what's on the menu, then you're ahead. But don't stick with that as a staple and try not to make it too frequent, because a black bean burger is healthier. A garden burger that's not too salty is better.
Okay. So what are some small steps that we can start taking today to start healing our bodies through food? We got the baby steps, like you said, like the nicotine gum. Like what are some small steps that we can take, even starting, with what's in our kitchens right now? Dr. Francois, what kind of swaps can we do right now to start that are just baby steps?
The baby steps that we can definitely take is start, definitely reading our food labels and implementing more of the fruits and vegetables. And if, like you mentioned, if you had to, like more of the lean meats, if we're transitioning, definitely want to, do that instead. And like you mentioned with the beans, slowly but surely implement those. And a lot of times too, we eat too fast, and that can also cause like the indigestion feeling with the beans. So, and slowing down, removing the distractions while we're eating. So avoiding the scrolling on TikTok, avoid, watching TV, solely concentrate on your meal and slow down, enjoy the moment at that time. And, we'll slowly start to make those small, transitions. I always believe, the slower you go, like I always feel like the further you can go, you can go. If we try to implement all of these different changes all at one time, it can be overwhelming, and you can become frustrated with, with the whole idea of, oh, I got to change this, I have to do this, now they're telling me I can't have this, I can't. But focus on what you can have, and just a very, very slow process. And Dr. Thompson mentioned, even one smaller change can increase years in our lives. So just start and go from there.
Thank you. Dr. Thompson.
I fully agree. If you want to have some objectivity to it, figure out how much whole food servings you eat a day. Just maybe think back over the past few days, how many servings of fruit or vegetables. It's not hard to figure out a serving. 1 apple's a serving, a banana's a serving, a half cup of cooked greens serving. You can always go online. Everybody has a smartphone, figure out what the servings are. But if you want to be more objective at it, just gradually increase your number of servings per day every 2 weeks. If you average like the standard American 2, then okay, I'm this week, starting tomorrow, I'm gonna make sure I have 3. Just adding a banana every day might do it, or an apple, or a half cup of greens, or a half cup of beans. So just maybe track that and see how things are in a few months, and you would have doubled or tripled. You would have tripled your serving. So again, you are starting to reap the benefits without having done anything else. And then just have a mindset that at some point you're going to really start ratcheting back on the not so good stuff, which will be easier because you're putting more fiber in and it ain't going to have a lot of room for the bad stuff. And the reason why the bad stuff easily you get in is because it usually gets digested so fast, French fries and things like that, candy and, caramel corn and all that. The reason why you keep eating it and eating it is because you get the sugar rust and it gets digested, goes in your system real fast. And that's what the problem is, because you get that insulin resistance and it feeds on itself because it's a vicious cycle, because it's a risk reward type of thing. It makes that dopamine rush, just like cocaine does. But when you break that cycle, eat more fiber. Fiber takes some of that sugar and excess hormones and excess oil right out the back. And so by getting more fiber in, you're going to get healthier. You're going to make better decisions. Your brain's going to be healthier because stuff comes from the gut from eating proper food to the brain and heart and makes you healthier. So it's kind of a vicious cycle of improvement if you move up that ladder with increasing good food choices.
And I forgot to mention too, also just replacing those sugary drinks with water. That's something very simple that we can, definitely all do. Why drink your calories, and drink the sugary drinks. Let's just replace it with water.
Yep. And if you're bored with water, like me, I have a history of kidney stones from all my bad eating. I didn't start eating well till in my 50s, eating as well as I do now. So I had developed kidney stones, and so I'm supposed to drink at least 8 glasses of water every day or more. And I just find that so hard to do, especially when I was fully working as a physician. But what I found is just spurting some lemon in the water made all the difference in the world. So, they say when you get lemons, make what? Lemon water, not lemonade.
Lemon water, not lemonade.
Don't put that sugar in that lemonade. Not even that agave. Agave is not good. It's pure fructose. So that when you put or some other infuse whatever you want. You might put some strawberries in or whatever, but that can take a little bit of that boredom out of the water if you get bored. I know some people drink water like fish, and I envy them, but I need a little something with it.
Yeah, cucumber water. That's my go-to.
Cucumber and mint. Yep, I love it.
I see some I love waters in the comments.
Yeah, and if people have some stomach issues with fiber and all that, then you brought up mint. Mint is good for the stomach, soothing. There are 3 things I tell people: mint, ginger, and fennel. Those fennel seeds. Those are 3 things. If you ever go to those Indian restaurants and you sometimes see that bowl of fennel seeds at the counter, because that spicy foods, a lot of people can't handle all that spices. So on the way out, they grab that fennel and they chew on that. But yeah, fennel's good for the stomach. So is mint.
What do you think about teas? I know, without putting all the sugar in it. What about tea?
Yeah, you got to get used to it. I've been used to sugarized tea all my life. I didn't know how people drank unsweetened tea, but I just trained my taste buds, because I do coffee that way too. I can't have too much because I have a history of high blood pressure. So I do decaf, but coffee's from a bean. So there's some antioxidants in coffee. It's just that people pour all that dairy in and creameries and sugar, and they're 5 steps backwards. But yeah, green tea, black tea, they have antioxidants in it. They also have a little caffeine. Then you have your herbal teas, and they have their pluses, chamomile and things like that. Be careful if you have ragweed allergy with chamomile. But yeah, I think the teas are great, especially if they are being replaced, if you're replacing it with something unhealthy you're drinking, on these fruity drinks or that have sugar in them or high fructose syrup.
Okay. This conversation has been so good, and now I'm gonna have to wait till part 2 to continue it. But what's one thing that you want to leave the audience with tonight? Because we've talked about a lot of things. Dr. Francois, what do you want to leave the audience with? What one thing that they need to remember as they head to the kitchen tonight? Because I know they're going, even though it's getting late.
Just try to make one change a day, and it'll go a long way. Just try to accomplish that. Take it one day at a time, and you'll notice a difference after a while. You'll notice you've done, like if it's one change a day, like now over a month's time, oh wow, I've implemented 30 new foods I eat now, or I've taken out the sugary drinks, and I'm drinking mainly water, and write it down to all of the things that you've accomplished. Sometimes we try to remember and we'll forget some of the things that we have accomplished. So write it down, all of the goals that you have achieved. And that it's a motivation for you to just keep going on to the next month and making those changes.
Thank you. That's a great one. Write it down. Dr. Thompson, what about you? What's one thing you want everybody to remember tonight?
Well, first, I want them to first remember what Dr. Francois said.
Yes.
Because I think that's crucial and central to this theme. I guess, secondly, I would say to remember that all plants have fiber. So when you can't go wrong if you're eating a plant that's not highly processed. Now, even applesauce is processed to an extent, but if you get unsweetened applesauce, then you're still not getting the corn, the high fructose corn syrup. You're not getting additives and things like that. So just remember that it's about plants, and the more plants you eat, the healthier you're going to be. And the easier it's going to be to let go of some of these other foods we've so habitually been consuming that are not healthy for us. So I think still, Dr. Francois, I'll put that number one. And then number two, pick your plant that's going to be your plant of the week or plant of the day and go for it.
Okay. Did you want to tell people where to find your book?
Oh, I sure do. Thank you. Well, really, fearlessmd21.com. That's my website. Right on the front page is a button to hit. Right now, it's just selling the ebook, and in a couple of days, I'll have it for the paperback. It's on Amazon. I know we're going through some times with some of these big retailers, but bear with me. But yeah, it's on the front page, fearlessmd21.com. If there's the foundation, I'm medical director of. We give information to marginalized communities, mostly minority communities, but we're open to everyone, and we do a virtual as well as in person. So we have a presence at healthylivingwithavision.org. And so and we're looking for more help for people on committees. They don't have to be in Chicago. There are ways you can be on our committees so we can reach the masses. And so we cover a lot of different topics in health. But thank you for asking.
Okay. And Dr. Francois, where can people find you?
I am
in Florida.
Yes, but I'm also on Instagram, Dr. Mrs. Francois on Instagram, New Vitality. Our website is newvitalitylife.com, and also on Facebook as well, New Vitality Health and Wellness Tampa, or myself, Erica Francois, on there too. Yes.
Well, I want to thank you both. This has been such a great conversation, very enlightening, and I need to go rethink the things in my kitchen for sure. You guys have opened my eyes to a lot of things tonight. And thank you to everyone in the chat for all the amazing conversations and questions. And so for more information on nutrition and food as medicine, head over to blackdoctor.org. There's plenty of articles and resources there. And make sure you guys come back for part 2 of this series on March 26th at 8 o'clock. It'll be the 3 of us. So we will continue this conversation then. And I'm excited. I can't wait. So I'll see you guys then, but have a great night.
All right. You too.
Good night, everybody.